إدارة هذا الحوار اليوم مع الدكتور إنجن سينغ هو حول موضوع العرب إلى آسيا، الطرق القديمة والخيارات الحديثة. هذه المحاضرة حتكون باللغة الإنجليزية، وأيضاً حيكون معنا الدكتور بحيث إنه هو يجيب على بعض الأسئلة العربية إذا كان في أي سؤال باللغة العربية. We just start. Good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us in this event. Firstly, I would like to thank the Saudi Social Science Society for their invitation to moderate this value talk that promote an insightful information about the global logistic challenge to port cities between Asia and Arabia, including Singapore, Dubai, and Jeddah. In this talk, Professor Eng Sing Ho explains how cities come to dominate rivals in their neighborhood in the Red Sea, Persian Gulf, and Indian Ocean. Located between Europe and China, these cities have jacked with one another to capture the traffic of the world trade. The talk lays out of a framework with three key factors that have determined which cities are the most successful in each era. The three areas are the location, production, and government. Cities such as Singapore and Dubai have become such successes in recent decades, positioning themselves as hubs in air-sea multimodal logistics and new global supply chain networks. Others such as Jeddah, Aden, Mocha, Djibouti, Surat, and Bombay, and also Malacca and Aceh were dominant in previous centuries as maritime ports. And some are repositioning themselves as contenders today and into the future. The speaker will invite discussion from the audience on lessons these cases have for Saudi Arabia. As the country seeks to leverage its location, production, and government to create transformative hubs such as NEOM and revitalize historic ones such as Jeddah to plug itself into the fins of global commerce on top of and beyond oil. We have an expert speaker today to discuss this issue. We have Professor Eng Sing Ho, who for years was the Muhammad Al-Aqil Distinguished Visiting Professor in Arabia-Asia's study within the mid-cluster historical sociology of Asia connections cluster since June 2014. He is currently a professor of anthropology and professor of history at Duke University in the United States. He also a leading scholar of transactional anthropology, history, and Muslim society, Arab diasporas, and the Indian Ocean at the National University of Singapore. He was previously a professor of anthropology at Harvard University and a senior scholar at the Harvard Academy for International and Area Studies. Professor Hu received his PhD and the master in anthropology from University of Chicago. His research expertise is in Arabia, coastal South Asia, and maritime Southeast Asia, and he maintains active collaboration with scholars in these regions. He is specialist in on Arab Muslim diasporas across the Indian Ocean and their relations with Western Empire, past and present. He has been involved in the Inter-Asia collaboration among the Social Science Research Council, the National University of Singapore, Hong Kong University, and others since 2008, including the SSRC Inter-Asia postdoctoral fellowship program. He is also country and profile writer at the Economist group. He was educated, as we said before, or mentioned before, at the University of Chicago and Stanford University. He is also consulting editor and editorial board member of many international journals, such as American Anthropologist and Comparative Studies in Society and History and Anthropology. Last but not least, he is an international economist at the government of Singapore Investment Corporation. Hope this introduction shed a light on the importance of this lecture, as we have a knowledgeable and learned speaker. I will turn this over first to the professor to make opening comments and give his lecture, and then we'll open it up. Just a couple of logistical points for the audience. If you would like to ask questions or make comments, you can do so in the chat box or in the queue and the questions and answers as well. Or you can raise your hand at the end of the talk. We would like to thank the Saudi Social Science Society again for hosting this event. Professor Injis Singh Ho, the platform is yours. I'm sorry for the pronunciation of your name. Just forgive me.
Thank you, Dr. Mona, and thank you to Dr. Dosari for the kind invitation. Can you see me and hear me okay?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get you some graphics, but the screen color is a bit strange. I'll try to see if I can share the screen. Sorry, 1 minute. Let me, I have to deal with the screen sharing 1 minute. I'm trying to share a screen with you. Just give me 1 minute. I'm sorry.
Yeah, take your time, Professor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Can you see the shared screen now?
No, unfortunately, we just can see you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's clear now.
Can you see it's clear now?
Yes.
Okay, great. And can you see me also, or can you just see the screen?
Yeah, we do. We can see you and see the screen.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, wonderful.
Over part of the map is just behind the box. So if you can just minimize it.
The box. Oh, sorry. The box. Like this is okay?
Well, I think it's clear. It's clear because it starts in Canton, the road, I think, right?
That's right. That's right.
Oh.
Okay. Oh. Okay, great. Wonderful. If you can see the screen, then I'll start my talk now, okay?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you. In the Middle East today, my talk will be about Asia and the Middle East and the port cities in between them, as Dr. Mona has mentioned, And I will speak about a few cities and see the dynamics of their rivalry, and then try to invite discussion on how Saudi cities such as Jeddah and the King Abdullah Economic City can take part in this race or rivalry. So Asia and the Middle East. In the Middle East today, there is a renewed interest in Asia as a place where one can find models of how non-Western societies can be successful in a world dominated by the West. Arab investors, tourists, government officials have all been looking east, going to places such as Malaysia, Singapore, and China in recent years. If you travel around the Gulf region and Saudi Arabia, you will come across something strange. Singapore as a model, Dubai also sometimes. The question is, what is it about Singapore and to some extent Dubai that seems intriguing or attractive to people in Arabia and the Middle East as a model for their own societies or economic development? The attention has gone the other way around too. The former Vice Chancellor of the National University of Singapore was head of the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. And Singapore's former Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, became something of a fixture on the Saudi Arabian lecture circuit before he passed away. And of course, you have the Muhammad Al-Aghil Chair in Arabia-Asia Studies at the National University of Singapore, which I currently hold, founded by the visionary Muhammad Al-Aghil of Jarir in Saudi Arabia, and also a Middle East Institute, which I directed for a few years. Now, relations between Asia and the Middle East are, of course, not new. The Arabian Peninsula and Southeast Asia have always had coastlines sharing the Indian Ocean and always will. This ocean provided long-standing connections between the two. My own research on Hadramis in Yemen, India, and Southeast Asia have allowed me to see how a people can consider very different places around this ocean, such as Jeddah, Aden, Mombasa, Abu Dhabi, Penang, Pontianak, and Singapore home. In what follows, I will suggest that this ocean can give us a common conceptual approach to thinking about how places in Arabia and Southeast Asia, such as Dubai, Singapore, have become very successful in the contemporary world. Of course, they always have rivals, and Jeddah and King Abdullah Economic City have great potential in coming up. The iconic status today as global cities is not simply a function of globalization, but can be understood in terms of dynamic currents that shape and reshape places in the Indian Ocean. Dubai and Singapore are two places that have been successful because they have understood these currents and acted in accordance with shifts in their dynamics. Jeddah could as well. What are these dynamics, their constants over the long term, and their recent shifts? As someone who comes from a port city in the Indian Ocean, that's where I sit right now, my instinct is to think of Dubai as a sister city, a similar kind of place in the same ocean. This is not a bad start, as the free port of Jabal Ali, dreamt up by Sheikh Rashid in the early 1970s, has put Dubai on the world shipping map and spawned similar clusters in different industries, media, finance, logistics, flowers across the city. Dubai has become a phenomenon because, including its spectacular real estate and financial crashes, and one cannot help but compare it with another phenomenon, Singapore, which sits in the same ocean further east. What of all this is new and what is old? Three things, it seems to me, are worth thinking about: location, production, and government. Now, if you look at the map I'm sharing with you on the screen, you will see the main routes of international trade across the Indian Ocean have remained quite stable since the 15th century. If you look at the gray line from Canton through Singapore to Quilon to Hormuz to Basra, this was a long route that linked southern China, Canton, Zaytun, to Basra. Chinese and Arab ships sailed the entire route with a stop in between at Quilon on the Malabar coast of India. From Basra, goods were transshipped up to Baghdad, then ported overland to the Levant and onto Europe. Now, this long route went through the South China Sea, the Indian Ocean, and up the Persian Gulf. If you'll notice, up the Persian Gulf. Now, when the Mongols sacked Baghdad in 1258, the route from Baghdad to the Levant became problematic. So this breakup of the Abbasid security along the Baghdad-Levant sector made the whole route through the Persian Gulf very difficult. And the Red Sea route going through Aden, Jeddah, Cairo came to dominate, came to replace the Persian Gulf route. From this time onwards, from the 1258 and the 13th, 14th century onwards, the main trade route across the Indian Ocean went through ports located at three main points: the Bab al-Mandab, where Aden is, at the entrance to the Red Sea and on to Cairo, Alexandria, and Venice. And in the middle, Gujarat, where you see Ahmedabad, Cambay, and Surat in India, which is the middle spot in the Indian Ocean. And then to the right, the Straits of Malacca, where you see Aceh, Pasai, Malacca, Singapore, and from there to China. This structure remained very stable through the mid-19th century, and with some modification into the 20th century. In 2008, when an undersea cable between Egypt and Italy was cut in late January, half the internet traffic in the Middle East and South Asia was disrupted. If you can see, if you look at the screen I'm sharing with you, that map of internet cables pretty much replicates the long trading routes that I've just talked about from centuries ago. If you look again at this map, at this main map here, you look again at this main map here, there are three main points around Aden, Bab al-Mandab, Gujarat, and the Straits of Malacca. At each of these three main points, you have a number of port cities which rival each other to be the main port of trade and took turns at it. So at the Bab al-Mandab, you had Aden, Mocha, Jeddah, Zeira, Massawa, and now Djibouti. In Gujarat, you have Cambay, Diu, Surat, and today Bombay is the lead city. And in the Straits of Malacca, you had Aceh, Palembang, Siak, Real, Malacca, and today Singapore is the lead city. Let me just give you a little view of these cities I'm talking about. So this is Singapore. This is Singapore today, iconic global city. This is Dubai today with the Burj Dubai, famous icon. And here you have Jeddah with a view of the Corniche coming up quite strongly. And close to Jeddah, you have the King Abdullah economic city. So if you notice, all these cities have a lot of water around it. They are port cities, and that means a lot for their dynamism and their potential. So each of these port cities that we are talking about can be thought of as endowed with location as a resource. But location is not enough. To be dominant successfully over rivals depends on how that resource of location was cultivated and built on. The channels of international shipping trade that flowed across the ocean were ever ready to come into each of these ports. Thus, location as a resource. That resource, however, had to be cultivated and could be done so in different ways. Here are 4 ways in which location could be cultivated by government. They move roughly from coercion to consent. Overall, modes of coercion, of consent rather than coercion, would prove more sustainable in the long run and scalable upwards. The most successful governments have focused on making their ports attractive to customers. So the first way to do it is piracy. Armed groups could organize and raid ships at sea without bringing them into port to trade. This strategy has been pursued anew today with stunning success by Somalis. The second approach is state piracy. Ships could be coerced into coming into port to trade and be taxed, as the Portuguese attempted in the 16th century. Third is what I call a post-piracy state. Instead of forcing ships to come into your port, ships could be attracted into your port by things such as low taxes, standardized weights and currencies, systems of arbitration, courts of law applying non-legal codes such as the Shafi'i Mu'amalat codes, judgment and security provided by states in exchange for a low, reasonable tax. Now, across the Indian Ocean, especially Southeast Asia, Muslim jurists, and many of them Hadrami Sayyids, often were sought after by such port states to create such governmental institutions. Free ports, where no tax was levied on goods imported or exported, were the most successful at attracting ships. Singapore, Penang, Aden, Dubai grew very quickly as free ports. Free ports attract merchants who have things to sell. They can bring in lots of goods for free, set up a nice shop and warehouse, and make the port as a whole a thriving emporium, or what we call a ma'rab in Arabic. The fourth way to do it is to have a trading state. Apart from allowing free trade, states could make themselves free to trade, combining the roles of government and merchant. This is the most sophisticated way of cultivating location and resource, and it's an alternative which I think Dubai and Singapore are pioneering in ever new ways today. Now, if we think of these as four different strategies of port making, and think of them as choices being made in the context of rivalry with other places, the issue of timing, when one can think about making the transition from one strategy to another, emerges as a key issue of key determinant of who wins out historically. I first came across this issue of timing while working on the migrations of Hadrami ulama across the Malay archipelago. In this region, the Malay archipelago, there was a constant demand for religious functionaries, whether in communities or states. The need was more pressing, however, in new port sultanates attempting to place themselves on the trading map, such as here in Southeast Asia. Let me show you on the slide. Okay, here in Southeast Asia, if you look, there's Singapore, Sumatra, Borneo, Java, and to the right on the west coast of Java, you see Mempawah, Pontianak, Kubu, and Matan. These are the places that I'm talking about. So these little places, Kubu, Matan, Mempawah, Pontianak, on the southwest coast of India, of Borneo, were little Malaccas in the making, a little off the main east-west route, but on the spice routes to the Moluccas, and they competed with each other for a few key ingredients to survive or to thrive: foreign merchants, a measure of political security and freedom, low taxes, institutions for justice and resolution of commercial disputes. In the early stages, piracy was a part of the process of state making, channeling traders away from other towns, primitive accumulation in a competitive field. Once a port-making project reached a certain size, however, such methods like piracy became counterproductive. A new announcement had to be made that this was a civilized and comfortable place to do business, an advertisement that this place is now mature. For that purpose, there were few better ways than installing a resident Muslim jurist, an alim, to refashion a pirate's haven as a new sphere of civilian concourse, boasting a Friday mosque, a court of justice, a school, madrasa. If one who graced these civilized circles with his presence was a descendant of the Prophet, so much the better. A Hadrami source describes the following sequence of events as taking place when the Sultan of Mempawah, you see at the top, at the about the middle of Borneo on the left-hand side, when the Sultan of Mempawah finally succeeded in drawing the Hadramaut-born jurist Sayyid Hussein bin Ahmad al-Qadri from Matan, further down south, in 1747. So I quote from this Hadrami text. The Sultan of Mempawah assembles his princes and ministers and sons, announced to them his happiness at the coming of the Sayyid, and said that it was hard to find one of the house of the Prophet in that country, and that his coming was a stroke of good fortune. A mosque and a house were built in a quarter called Kalaherang for the Sayyid. The Sultan sent his son Gusti Haji with a group of soldiers in 2 ships to Matan. In the month of Muharram 1160, Sayyid Hussein left Matan. His father-in-law, who was the Sultan of Matan, supplied him with 3 sailing ships after he had spent 17 years in Matan. Sayyid Hussein stayed with his family in his new house in the port city, in the new port of Mempawah. He taught students who came to him from all directions, and his house became a shelter for foreigners and was sought by guests. As well, the place became a city of learning and trade, unquote. So Matan, with the arrival of Sayyid Hussein, becomes this place where religious law is promulgated, where people can do business and know that they receive justice. So Matan's loss was Mempawah's gain. Sayyid Hussein had left Matan after 17 years precisely because the Sultan there, his father-in-law, had not fully crossed the line separating prince from pirate. Sayyid Hussein had passed judgment in Matan on one Ahmad Muda, a foreign trader who had assaulted a woman, sentencing him to a fine and repentance, to which the Sultan had agreed. When the trader left for his home country, however, the Sultan's men looted and killed Ahmad Muda and his companions at sea. The Sayyid summarily severed his reputation from that of the Sultan and took up Mempawah's long-standing invitation to relocate there. Now, the Sultan of Matan's era lay not so much in what he did as when he did it. Late in his career, after the reputations of Sultan, Sayyid, and state had been built up. Timing is everything, and timing itself is part of a strategy which can determine which one among neighboring port cities triumph over rivals. Sayyid Hussein's son, Sayyid Abdurrahman al-Qadri himself, initially started off his career as a pirate, but went on to found the port state of Pontianak. You can see Pontianak under Mempawah on the map, cutting down huge trees in the forest to build iconic public institutions such as the mosque, which still stands today. And this is a mosque which Sayyid Abdurrahman built in Pontianak. If you go to Pontianak today, you can still see this mosque. In the inside of the mosque, you see these large pillars which were cut down, which are trees cut down by Sayyid Abdul Rahman himself. Now, beyond the issue, and these are drawings of the various sultans and sayyids. You can see they have this jambiya in their boats here. So to go back to our map, beyond the issue of location on the routes and the finer points of its cultivation, another factor, production, can play an important role as well. So let us move now from location to production. One of the major sources of attraction to these port cities was, of course, the regional products they produced and exported. So production enhances a location. The ports function as an outlet or vent for regional production, both enhances and supplements its international trading role. While free ports attract sellers, the strength of regional production attracts buyers. In the Red Sea, Yemeni coffee gave Mocha the edge over Aden and Jeddah in the 16th and 17th century as an entrepot, until the Dutch stole some plants and produced them in Java, creating the first Mocha Java coffee. Over in India, before colonialism, Gujarat's enormous cloth production, its market stretched from the Middle East to Southeast Asia, made its ports international trading stops until it lost out to cheap, mass-produced English cloth in the 19th century. Over to the right, in the Straits of Malacca, Aceh's production of pepper, you see Aceh at the top of Sumatra, Aceh's production of pepper gave it the edge over rivals such as Pasai and Malacca. in the 17th and 18th centuries. Now, the importance of both production and location and their interrelation is seen if we compare the post-independence trajectories of Aden and Singapore. These were among the busiest ports in the world at independence. Aden in 1967 when the British left, and Singapore in 1965 when it was kicked out of Malaysia. They were number 3, number 4, number 5 busiest ports in the world. Both also subsisted of huge military installations they hosted, the British Royal Air Force in Aden and the British Navy in Singapore. Aden, whose venting function, coffee, fish, hides, and honey, had been overshadowed by its entrepot role pre-independence, under the post-colonial socialist government emphasized production over international trade, and Aden basically sank into obscurity, became nothing. Singapore, which had developed a significant venting function, exporting Malayan tin and rubber over the 20th century, in addition to her pre-existing trading port role, replaced the lost production of Malayan rubber and tin with new multinational-owned electronics factories in the 1970s and 80s, becoming the world's largest producer of hard disk drives for export, for example. Aden went the opposite way, creating new import substitution production, such as matches, shoes, cigarettes, beer, small stuff, and lost entrepot trade to new rivals on the horizon, such as Dubai. Dubai, as we know, is in the Persian Gulf, not the Red Sea. In terms of the half-millennium-old main trade route across the Indian Ocean connecting China and Europe, Dubai's location is a disadvantage compared to Aden. For Aden enjoys what is called zero deviation. Ships sailing by zero deviation, I mean ships sailing between Rotterdam in Europe and Singapore lose time and money if they have to detour through Dubai because they go through the Red Sea, and Dubai is on the Persian Gulf. Is Dubai Aden's successor in our old story of Indian Ocean port cities? If you think in terms of ships, you might say that Dubai partly succeeded Aden, but Dubai added something spectacularly new as well. If you think in terms of aircraft, Dubai may have shifted the old east-west trade route back from the Red Sea in favor of the Persian Gulf. And this, it may be a successor to Baghdad as well in terms of the old pre-Mongol route and the new one of a halfway point between east and west for aircraft. Baghdad in the 20th century used to be a halfway point between Europe and Asia for aircraft, where jets had to refuel before jet engines extended their range. Adding aircraft to our story gives the old relation between location and production a new twist in the past few decades. This is called intermodal or multimodal transport, or the brave new world of the logistics revolution, the working man's term for globalization. The logistics revolution is about reconfiguring the relation between location and production. What this reconfiguration means for all these old Indian Ocean port cities is the new part of the story which is unfolding today. The logistics revolution is connected to what Americans have come to hate as outsourcing, and their business compatriots celebrate as supply chain management. The logistics revolution, understood as new techniques, powers, and enthusiasms over the mixing and control of modes of transportation, tracking, inventory, sorting, warehouse, and precise delivery in space and time, just-in-time delivery, have enabled what is called the horizontalization in industries such as electronics and aircraft manufacture of what used to be the vertically integrated production, exemplified by Ford's River Rouge production line in Detroit. Whereas Henry Ford thought he could do better by integrating more of supply under one roof, increasing profit and reducing unpredictability, the new companies of the 90s, Dell, Cisco, Boeing, have been thriving by divesting themselves of production steps to contract manufacturers, abdicating manufacture almost completely like Cisco, or reserving only design, final assembly, and testing for themselves. So you can see here, Boeing 787 aircraft, fixed trailing edge is made in Nagoya, central fuselage is made in Italy, engine casing is made in California, forward fuselage made in Kansas, cargo access doors made in Sweden, and so on and so forth. Walmart is often lauded as a pioneer in all of this, in which detailed knowledge of how items move at checkout counters, dynamic statistics enabled by physical sensors connected to electronic computers was applied backwards through inventory and purchases into the costing, manufacture, inventory, and delivery processes of suppliers, of manufacturers. Such knowledge gave its producer, which is to say the retailer Walmart, powers to squeeze out inefficiencies in stock, supply, transport, and ultimately to squeeze its suppliers and manufacturers themselves. Such knowledge, when blended with the logistics of transport, tracking, sorting, warehousing, and delivering myriad parts from multiple sources, enabled manufacturers to pick and choose from an expanded range of supplying companies and countries from across the world, shading the work of production into that of arbitrage trading. Essentially, the logistics revolution allowed manufacturers to reduce moving inventory and shop from more suppliers and more countries, pushing down supply prices and reducing costs. Manufactured parts became cheapened as commodities. So moving in this direction, National Semiconductor of the US in 1992 found itself dealing with 42 freight forwarders and 13 transport carriers delivering products from a myriad of facilities. This became a huge headache. 42 freight forwarders, 13 transport carriers, a huge headache. So National Semiconductor farmed out the headache to FedEx. And FedEx consolidated all this into a single global distribution center in Singapore. Costs were cut in half. Delivery times were cut from 18 days to a maximum of 2 days. The logistics revolution meant that higher profits from lower inventories moving in still. As companies focused on the supply chain and the role of logistics in production grew, logistics was farmed out to specialists like FedEx and UPS, and in some cases, they started to do manufacturing as well. Now, Singapore, as a FedEx distribution center in the 1990s, as a hub, a logistics hub, is no longer about local production, for which it has been replaced by Vietnam, China, Thailand. Rather, it is about a production process which is international and involves international transport whose lines of travel meet in one place, Singapore. This is a reprise of location as resource for Singapore, now not in the context of Indian Ocean trade routes, but of globalized production, supply chain management, logistics revolution, done through a combination of sea, land, and air modes of transportation. For multinationals, Singapore's hub role extends beyond production savings in inventory reduction and supplier flexibility and costs to the organization of a host of activities such as regional headquarters. Regional headquarters has become a new big topic today in Saudi Arabia. Saudi wants to host regional quarters. So we are talking here about Singapore, which has been doing that. So in a regional headquarters like Singapore, functions such as advertising, research, development, customer service, and even parts stock are centralized in Singapore rather than duplicated in each country. Weekly, thousands of specialists fly from Singapore to India, China, and Southeast Asia to subsidiaries and customers. This is evident in the multiplication of Singapore Airlines destinations across India and China. You can see on the slide from Singapore, they go all over the place. And if you look at that circle, at the limit of that circle around Singapore Singapore's hinterland hits Dubai on the left and Shanghai on the right, about 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. So that magic circle hits Dubai on the left and Shanghai on the right. At the limit of this magic regional circle, Singapore bumps up against Shanghai and Shanghai and Dubai are emerging as rivals for this hub HQ role. Now, unlike Singapore, Dubai did not enter the 1990s already inserted into the veins of global production and distribution. However, Dubai had other advantages which allowed it to draw those networks to itself. Since the 1970s, provisioning the oil industry had created a huge transport load imbalance. And what I mean by transport load imbalance is that aircraft were flying into the Persian Gulf, into Dubai, loaded with supplies for building the oil industry, but the aircraft were flying out empty. So Dubai realized that here was an opportunity, because when the flights are empty, freight costs are very cheap. So Dubai capitalized on low freight costs westwards by developing a sea-air link. So goods coming from the east, from Asia, via cheaper sea transport could be accelerated westwards through airlift, shortening time and allowing for new destinations. In 1978, the first sea-air transshipment in Dubai came from Australia by ship, and in Dubai was airlifted to Libya. This took 20 days, less than half the full maritime journey time through the Suez Canal, which used to take 45 days. So more than half of savings in time. The sea-air bridge via Dubai also provides fast and cost-effective alternative to Asia-Europe transshipment via the USA. So if you export from Taiwan or China, you could export via the Pacific, then across the US by train, and then across by ship back to Europe. This was how it used to be done. But Dubai provides a very strong competitive alternative to this. Now, furthermore, in the 1990s, this East-West sea-air link developed further as the Central CIS countries, the ex-Soviet republics in Central Asia, opened up. Dubai became a retail and wholesale shopping mecca for Russians and Central Asians, in addition to Asian workers in the Persian Gulf. In this same decade, the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait and the subsequent Gulf Wars exacerbated this directional load imbalance, with military and reconstruction material moving into the Gulf and the aircraft flying out empty, creating further cost advantages for air freight out of the Gulf. With the development of traffic volume through Dubai as a sea air hub, the reach of aircraft makes it feasible for Dubai to serve as a hub for humanitarian relief as well across Africa and South Asia, tsunamis, earthquakes, things like that. The building of a flowers and perishables hub at the end of the runway dovetails with the development of the Africa air arm, as Africa is already furnishing Europe with fresh flowers and vegetables. Now, in Dubai, pulling together air and sea terminals, warehouses, and light assembly in a common bonded customs area in a place called Dubai Logistics City brings together the elements for a large and far-reaching hub that mediates between scales, regional and international. Now, warehousing plays a critical role in such functions. Brodel has brought out the importance of warehousing as a key enabler for Amsterdam's success in Holland in previous centuries, not just in drawing international trade networks to itself, but in dominating world markets and trade as well. The development of warehousing functions enables Dubai to emerge as a hub for both developed and underdeveloped markets. I'll give you an example. A Pakistani dye factory owner in New Jersey relocated to India. When he did so, he slashed production costs and he got easier access to raw inputs from India and China. The problem is in India, you constantly have port strikes and religious holidays, and that made delivery to US customers unreliable. So what did he do? He set up a warehouse to stock his India output in Dubai. In Dubai, he was able to have both low production costs in India and reliable delivery to the US. In setting up a warehouse in Dubai, he was given a number of visas for employees. He needed only one for a club he stations there, and he was able to sell the other visas, offsetting his warehouse costs. For global consumer electronics giants, warehousing in Dubai enables prompt after-sales service, and with light assembly added, allows for local customization, such as the different kinds of power plugs and different labels in different languages. So Dubai allows the customization of generic products for variations in the region, which may include the Middle East, CIS, and Africa. Low tariffs in Dubai make holding stock there economical. In Singapore's experience, this has enabled Western companies to set up operations there, supplying customers in less developed regional countries such as Thailand and Vietnam, contract producers with low foreign exchange holdings needing fast turnaround in production before receiving payment. Now let's move on to the third and probably the most important factor in all this, government. The nature of government and what it does, its policies. While this logistics infrastructure reaching beyond Dubai is brand new, its spark of low or no taxes on things moving through it harkens back to the old tax-free trade ports, which were a particularly attractive British innovation. How such free ports were designed, cultivated, and grown provides lessons and patterns for the success of Singapore and Dubai today, and I would say of Jeddah also. The combination of a decisive state hand and attractive terms for foreign business is notable. With this combination arose characteristic patterns of relation between state and local society. A major shaping force has been the unusual dual role of government as both state and merchant. This goes back to the legacy of the British East India Company and of its servants who traded on their own account across Asia, such as Stamford Raffles, the founder of Singapore. Accommodations were worked out in their founding roles as both ruler and merchant and continue to be worked out in Singapore and Dubai today. Non-European precedents also abound, such as the incorporation of Indian merchants as state officials by the Malacca Port Sultanate in Malaya, Persian and Chinese merchants as officials and aristocrats in the Thai Bangkok Port Dynasty, which still rules Thailand today. Arab Muslim merchants were used as partners by the Hindu Raja of Calicut Port in India. Such dualities are not theorized in Western democratic political theories of representation and rights, which makes their stunning contemporary success intriguing to some and exasperating to others. Such polities have unusual fiscal arrangements in which taxes play a relatively minor role. In Singapore, a high national savings rate of over 40% through budget surpluses and mandatory pension contributions funds infrastructure such as mass transit and dampens inflation despite high inflow of foreign investment. In Dubai, citizens are given stakes, literally, in the form of land through which they can participate in growth as frontiers. In Singapore, government ownership of large pieces of land previously owned by the British military enabled it to build affordable housing for the masses. Such fiscal actions create a sense of participation and consent among the populace and give the governments great leeway in making fast, large, and dramatic policy shifts. Some would say bets. Some bets succeed stunningly, while others fail along the way. We'll discuss this further later, but Saudi Arabia is in a very similar position in this sense. Now, in the event, there seems to be more adjusting than finger pointing. High state revenue helps with adjusting. The whole customary world of state society accommodations has risen in these places that is very different from the modern taxation representation balances worked out in the leading Western nations. A theory of gift exchange between state and society, public and private, might be helpful here, and such theories are already embedded in Islamic concepts such as waqf, sadaqah, hiba, wasiyya, waratha, amal jari, tawbah, tahleel, and so on. Further east, such terms such as Asian values, group precedence over individual, social harmony, filial piety, and so on are similar concepts. And they serve as rudimentary concepts for such exchanges between society and state. Something of a theory of tolerance between state and society was expressed to me by a friend in Abu Dhabi, who quoted from a poem from Imam Shafi'i to explain how the tolerance and generosity of the rulers of Dubai had paved their way. And the quote is from Imam Shafi'i: "Let your tolerance be a curtain covering others' deficiencies, and your generosity will be a shade sheltering your own inadequacies when things go bad." So I move now to Dubai and Singapore as a model and how they brand and export the model. The involvement of government in commerce has enabled Singapore and Dubai to create a few champion companies internationally, grown out of local volume and expertise, port operations, sovereign wealth funds, for example. In Singapore's case, doing business as a government gives it an advantage available to few other companies. Because as a government, Singapore government-linked companies can deal with other governments as a counterpart. This is especially beneficial in entering countries newly opening up to international business, such as China 20 years ago, India, Vietnam, Burma today, and to others with unresponsive bureaucracies, such as Indonesia. While the Singapore government has benefited from such political advantages with its own businessmen, advantages through its own government-linked companies, it has also shared those advantages with its own businessmen and with leading multinationals. With government facilitation, Singapore companies have been successful as contract manufacturers for Western companies, China providing them strategic depth as a manufacturing base, allowing for flexibility in scale, ramping up production quickly when necessary. In the past 2 decades, this umbrella or partnership has developed in the form of manufacturing and business zones as parks in Indonesia, China, and India, with the involvement of Singapore government bodies in lead development and coordinating roles. So such ventures creating business parks, free trade zones, and so on in the Asian region add to Singapore's attractiveness as a partner for global companies, enhancing its own locational branding as hub and regional headquarters. You might know that places which are very successful and famous today, such as Shenzhen in China, was sparked by these Singapore involvements. While Dubai has been able to attract global companies to itself and to send its own port and investment arms out to compete with the world like Singapore, it has not played a role of regional political commercial facilitator abroad for its commercial partners. However, Dubai already provides commercial facilitation for political partners, such as the governments of Iran and Pakistan, and potentials exist for it to act as a bridge in the other direction to the benefit of international and regional partners. Much of this may already be taking place in big and small ways, but has not been formalized and advertised, as is the case in Singapore. What Dubai and Singapore do share is great flexibility in accommodating and exploiting the idiosyncrasies of their regional hinterlands and in adjusting their perception of who those hinterlands consist of. So let me show you a few more slides. So this is Singapore, the entrance to the port. You see the containers on trucks entering the port by land transport. Here you have giant gantry cranes lifting the containers onto ships. You see the cranes here. And here we have photographs from Dubai. Here you have the Emirates, China, wholesale plaza. And you see all these Chinese goods being sold in Dubai, and it's a ma'rad, a big wholesale ma'rad. And here you see these various shops, Indian, Arabic shops in Dubai, selling all kinds of goods, and they are very small, but they are wholesalers actually. And you can see from these pictures of people carrying things, portering things in boxes. There's a whole business of wholesaling on large and small scales by people from China, from India, from Africa, Pakistan. You can see here Africa. And they also supply to places like East Africa, Somalia, Sudan, and also Iran, from the sea to the land to the ships and so on. So you see this multimodal transportation at work, even on an informal basis. A consensus seems to have emerged on what Dubai can learn from Singapore. The creation of government bodies such as the Economic Development Board, coordination amongst government bodies tailored to specific outcomes such as sparking new industries, creating one-stop shops for foreign investors, or rationalizing infrastructure planning and growth, sovereign equities investments such as Temasek, and now in Saudi you have your PIF, education and skills development through universities and institutes, and a cadre of super civil servants able to move between running ministries and running companies with ease. So here I'm showing you a picture from inside the Dubai School of Government. And in the Dubai School of Government, if you look at the lobby, the photographs is very interesting. You see on the left, the former Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. You see two away from him, Larry Summers, the ex-president of Harvard University and the ex-Treasury Secretary of the United States. Next to him is Kishore Mahbubani, who was the Dean of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. So we see here lessons, Dubai taking lessons from Singapore, Singapore also taking lessons from the US. And my suggestion is that lessons are available to be borrowed from different parts of the world. And in Saudi Arabia today, as we think about Jeddah and King Abdullah economic city, we can think of how we can learn lessons from other places and also learn from their mistakes and not to repeat their mistakes. So let me just conclude by suggesting a few points for thinking and discussion for Jeddah and King Abdullah economic city. So what lessons can we draw from this story I've just told you? Number one, location is of key importance. Jeddah, as we can see from the map, let's go back to the map here. Just a minute. So Jeddah, as we can see from the map here, is actually on the main route, where you see the thick black line. It is on the main route between Singapore and Rotterdam. This is a huge advantage because if you look at Dubai, Dubai is not on the main route that goes through the Suez Canal. So if you go from Singapore or China through Singapore, through the Red Sea to Rotterdam, you pass through Jeddah. If you were to go to Dubai, you have to do a detour, waste you 5-10 days. So Jeddah has a huge advantage over Dubai. Now, Jeddah, I would think of Jeddah together with the King Abdullah economic city as a grouping. And this grouping is interesting because there are other groupings in which new container ports have taken over the functions of the old port. So you have, for example, in the United States, Newark Port, new container port, has overshadowed, taken over New York City's role as a port. On the west coast, Oakland has overshadowed San Francisco as the major port. And in Europe, of course, Rotterdam has completely taken over from London as the main port due to containerization. So Jeddah and KA have a similar dual role, where the King Abdullah Economic City, as the main container port, will be taking over Jeddah. But that is not the end of the story, because Jeddah also has the airport, which is only 45 minutes from King Abdullah Economic City. And Jeddah, if you think of Jeddah, Jeddah is no different from Dubai, from Doha, from Istanbul, from Addis Ababa, because Jeddah sits between Asia and Europe. So Jeddah is in play as a competitor to Dubai, to Doha, to Istanbul, to Addis Ababa, as the hub in the Middle East for East-West aircraft. Now, Jeddah has another advantage where aircraft are concerned, because it has the annual Hajj. And the annual Hajj is one where the Hujjaj fly into Jeddah, the planes are full, but the planes go out empty. And if you remember the story of Dubai, empty planes means you have a huge freight opportunity. That load imbalance gives you an opportunity. The other thing about Jeddah is that although you have Hajj, and Hajj is a seasonal or mawsimi, you can actually stretch out that opportunity by encouraging the Umrah. If you have Umrah year round, you can move the numbers up to 20 million if you have the Umrah kicking in year round. And that really builds up your aircraft arm. Now, Jeddah also, of course, has a port, and Jeddah port, if you think together with King Abdullah Economic City, can transship containers and bulk break of goods to East Africa. Livestock and meat are coming from Sudan to Jeddah, and the ships return empty. That's another opportunity. You also have the opportunity for sea air transfer, which Dubai pioneered. So if you think of the King Abdullah Economic City and Jeddah airports, 45 minutes from each other, one could integrate the two by creating a bonded customs warehouse, a free trade zone, which includes both of them, the sort of thing I showed you in pictures of Singapore. And Jeddah and King Abdullah Economic City could also do warehousing along the lines I described earlier. Now, Jeddah and King Abdullah Economic City also have the third big thing, which is production. Like Gujarat, whose cloth was exported across the Indian Ocean and to the Middle East, Canton, whose manufactures went all the way across the world, and Singapore, which exported Malayan rubber. Production boosts Jeddah and Cake's location. So in Saudi, you have oil. Not only do you have oil, you have SABIC, which bought up Dow Chemicals and is producing all the intermediate plastics for things like car headlights. So SABIC is already plugged into the global supply chain, and that adds a heft, that production adds heft to Jeddah's location. And finally, government. In Saudi Arabia, you already enjoy low taxation, and government has a lot of financial power from oil money, especially if oil prices improve. So government can make big moves and bets. But government also needs to build up a legal system, like what Hadrami Ulama provided in Southeast Asia. Government could build out jurisdictional carve-outs, such as arbitration, such as in the King Abdullah Financial City, DIFC, and Singapore. So these are some ideas which come out of the discussion I've given you today on these rival port cities in the Indian Ocean. And I'm very excited to see Jeddah and the King Abdullah Economic City emerging as potential big players in the region. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to learn from the audience in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for this insightful information that we give us more of historical and the opportunity, the new opportunities that we might have in the future. Okay, and now we can open the floor for the audience. If anyone have questions or comments, please. Any questions? Any comments?
Take your time. There's a lot to
rush.
ممكن بالعربي كمان.
Yes, ممكن حتى تسألوا بالعربي. الدكتور عنده خبرة باللغة العربية، فممكن يجاوبكم بناء عليه على أسئلتكم.
إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله. Okay, this means I might excuse all of you to just ask some questions to the professor. Actually, just a few seconds, if anyone is raising hands, just see if anyone. Okay, we have نوف حزام الحربي.
يا أهلا وسهلا. I think the microphone ممكن الميكروفون افتح الميكروفون.
نوف. طيب نقدر نروح ل we can pass to 254789 has no name, so you can go.
مرحبا دكتور إنسان.
مرحبتين.
بس طبعا الحج والعمرة في يعطي فرصة كبيرة.
نعم.
باللينك سواء المسلمين القادمين من أوروبا من أوروبا صحيح. أو المسلمين الأكثرية اللي جايين صحيح. من آسيا وأفريقيا. كيف صحيح. ترى يعني الاستفادة من هذه الفرصة، يعني this opportunity من ناحية يعني bringing Jeddah and the crossroad to differentiated في فارق عن المناطق الأخرى وقوة إضافية.
نعم في المحاضرة أنا كلام كثير عن اللوجيستكس والأشياء المادية في الاتصالات بين المملكة والعالم بشكل عام. بس في حاجة مهمة جدا بالنسبة للحج ودور مكة، لأن إذا فكرنا في مكة ممكن نقول إنه مكة قد لعبت دور مهم كنوع من الأمم المتحدة. الأمم المتحدة الطبيعية والتاريخية من خلال الحجاج وخاصة المطوفين. فالمطوفين الذين موجودين في مكة هم من كل أنحاء العالم الإسلامي، وأصبحوا نوع من المقيمين أو مواطنين في مكة. بس في نفس الوقت هم ما زالوا عندهم اتصالات بأصحابهم في البلدان الأصلية، فهم يربطون ما بين مكة والعالم الإسلامي ككل كشيء مهم وكشيء عميق في المملكة، وهذا شيء معنوي مهم جدا. نعم.
Thank you, Doctor. We have also Haytham al-Thubaiti, Mr. Haytham al-Thubaiti.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for the Saudi Social Studies Society for organizing this, such a great talk by Dr. Hu. So my question here, from your point of view, to what extent that culture has an influence along with the trade, we're talking about products, but we also talk about cultural products. So I think we cannot, segregate culture, from trade. Yeah, thank you.
How shall I answer this question? I think historically, of course, culture and trade could not be separated. So if I think of the Hajj, for example, in the past, many people from India, from Southeast Asia, when they went on the Hajj, it was not only a spiritual journey, and it was not a journey by aircraft where you take 6 hours, 8 hours, and you're there. You pay $3,000 and one day you are in Jakarta, and next day you are in Jeddah. No, it did not work that way. People would travel by sea, and they travel by sea and they stop in various ports along the way. And one way they did this travel and paid for it was, by example, taking a bag of pepper or filfil, which at that time was very expensive. It was like oil today, but it was very portable. So if you're coming from Indonesia, you take big bags of filfil and you sell it along the way. And say you go to India, you sell the filfil, you buy some Gujarat cloth, you take the Gujarat cloth, you go to Yemen, and in Yemen, you sell it for, let's say, some gahwa or bun, and from, or for honey or asal Yamani, which is very high value. And you take that asal or that bun and you go to Jeddah and you sell it. And that's how you finance your way to the Hajj. So as you are doing the Hajj, these products, which are both economic products and means of cultural exchange between these two countries, the two are intermixed and cannot be separated. So this is one sort of thing, I think, which you were asking about, this interchange between economics, culture, and foreign relations. Of course, this becomes very big in certain periods, like when you have coffee from Yemen, or you have cloth from Gujarat, and pepper from the Indonesian Isles. These were basically the, you could say, the Amla Saba, or hard currency trading items in previous centuries. And you can see that they were so tightly tied to the Hajj. Of course, the Hajj also is a place where, as you know, in Islam, the ziyaras, or the Hajj, the Friday prayers and so on, often have a market next to them, like a souk ukal. So the market and the Hajj are two very tightly interwoven things in Arabia and in Islam as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. We have Mr. Shafi Ad-Damir.
Ahlan, yeah, Professor Shafi.
Mr. Shafi Ad-Damir, the floor is yours. Seems like he doesn't have a mic or something. I don't know.
ممكن his microphone, ممكن ارفع الميكروفون.
Yeah, he have.
أو افتح الميكروفون.
Okay, we have
Shafi Ad-Damir, Dr. Shafi Ad-Damir, his hand is up. ممكن افتح الميكروفون دكتور شافي؟ الميكروفون مبند مغلق عندك.
Still have Nof Al-Harbi. Okay, great.
Okay, I had a technical problem with this. Well, I'm glad to see you, Doctor. That's
welcome. Hello, Dr. Shafi.
To hear Abu Abdul Karim Muhammad Al-Haqil voice, and Haytham, the latest speaker, is from KFUPM, actually from my department. So
yeah,
founded by friends. I'm glad that you came back to Jeddah at the end. I love Singapore, and also
virtually.
But
virtually.
Singapore and Dubai, I don't know how you can compare them to Aden or to Jeddah, the old cities. But just for information, Professor, that right now there is a huge push, a policy by the government, according to the 2030 for Jeddah. And now they are developing a huge area in south of Jeddah called Al Khumrah Logistic. I don't know if you heard about it or not, but it's under preparation. And with the 2030 and with Prince Mohammed bin Salman policy, he did talk about it quite a lot about that. Have a lot of shipment pass by the Red Sea without any benefit to the country.
Yes, without stopping in Jeddah and paying respects.
I just want to add to this, Jeddah is coming back and coming back strongly. I do believe in the next 5 years, it will be the hub, especially with the direction now to bring more companies with regional headquarters here. So the competition, in my opinion, is going to be high. So Jeddah is coming for sure. And please have a look into Al Khumrah logistic area. I will. This is going to be one of the most important things to come. Glad to hear it.
I will. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm excited to give this talk to the Saudi Social Studies Society and thank Dr. Dosari precisely because of what Dr. Shafi has said. If you look at am I sharing the screen am I sharing the screen now or not? I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I think I'm not sharing the screen. But anyway, yes, as I've shown in the talk and in the graphics, Jeddah is very much part of the area around the Bab al-Mandab, which in previous centuries was Aden, it was Mocha, which was the lead city. And I think Jeddah is very well placed to be the lead city in this region today or tomorrow. Djibouti is a player right now, but Djibouti has not really been able to do a good job with economics, logistics. Djibouti has done a good job hosting various militaries. Even the Chinese and the Americans are both there. But Djibouti has not really taken off. And Aden, of course, I'm sorry to say, has been having war, endless war. And so Aden is not in a position too. So Jeddah really, to my mind, doesn't really have competition. And because of the factors I've mentioned, location, production, Jeddah has always had this potential, and its potential and its advantages are actually much stronger than Dubai. What I will say is that Jeddah, you can call it a latecomer. And Jeddah as a latecomer, I would say, frankly, has been missing the key ingredient, which is government. And with this government you have today, this government is very plugged in to precisely the kinds of advantages I have outlined in this talk. So Jeddah has had the location, it has the location, it has production. What has been missing is focused, concerted government policy to take advantage of these locational and production advantages, and to really have a system which leverages them not in a national or regional context, but actually in a global context. And the difference in scale, if you think in different scales, the scale you choose is very important. And here the important scales are a combination of the regional scale and the global scale. And in my talk on Singapore and Dubai, I've tried to show you how their thinking has been on both regional, but especially on the global scale. And I think it is time for Saudi to take advantage of the advantages of Jeddah, and also King Abdullah Economic City and the logistics city you mentioned, to take advantage of these advantages and really run with them. And I think Jeddah has incredible potential.
This is just what I want to add. It's high in the agenda. It's in the heart of the Vision 2030, and it's been taken care of. And you are right, it is coming back, but coming back strongly. So I believe in the next 5 years, Jeddah is gonna take the seat there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Actually, I developed this talk, started developing these ideas in 2008. And I've been giving this talk or versions of it in various places. And I've been really waiting to give it in Saudi and waiting for Saudi to move on this. Because also I have friends in Jeddah in Saudi, so I'm happy to come and see it really take off.
We enjoyed this wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We still have Ms. Nof Al-Harbi with us. If you do have any questions or comments.
Yeah, man.
Okay, Doctor, during your talking, I was thinking of the China project, the new Silk Road project.
Yes.
How much will that affect the, or let's say the cons and you know and the pros that might affect Jeddah to be one of the most important city or successful city in trading?
Thank you for that very interesting question. I stupidly forgot to mention China and the BRI, or especially the BRI. And you put your finger on a key advantage factor for Jeddah, because China is coming in a big way. And if you think about it this way, when the European countries went east to East Asia, to China, to Southeast Asia, they stopped in the Middle East, basically from the Maghreb to the Mashriq. And this is what we call the history of colonization. They not only stopped, they took over these countries, except for a few like Saudi Arabia. And so the question is, now that the Chinese are going in the opposite direction from east to west, will they do things the same way? Will they also colonize the Middle East, or will they do things differently? Now, the Americans are very afraid that the Chinese will colonize the Middle East, but I don't think China is interested in colonizing the Middle East. China does not have the military capacity and the ability to do so, or the intention to do so. What I think is the case with China and the Middle East is a huge complementarity. So the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is going through basically the Muslim world, and China needs help with the Muslim world because they need to gain the trust of Muslims in many countries. And you have leading countries like Saudi Arabia who are leaders of the Islamic world who can help them with it. The second thing is that the China's Belt and Road Initiative actually needs a lot of money, and China itself doesn't have enough money to do it. Countries like Saudi Arabia, like the United Arab Emirates, like Kuwait, like Qatar have financial surpluses from oil, although it's lower with the oil prices, but they have financial surpluses which historically have been basically put in the hands of Western investment bankers to invest. So for example, from the first and second oil shocks in the 1970s, the Western bankers took these petrodollars and recycled them in Latin America, and the Latin Americans couldn't pay, leading to the debt crises in the early 1980s. So the Chinese Belt and Road, I think, provides Middle East oil producers with surplus funds yet another channel for investing their funds, and this time in real investments, not in financial products, but in real investments, bridges, roads, ports, and things, which will have great benefit to them. Because if you think about it, Saudi Arabia has interest in East Africa for food, for meats, for all kinds of things like that. And if you actually participate in the ports of transportation and so on, you, number one, have a return on your investment. And number two, you're building up real economic assets, which can be synergetic with your own economy.
Great. We have a comment or question. It came from Daddy Darmadi from Jakarta. I believe he's one of your students or so.
Yeah, yes.
He said, wonderful presentation, Prof. Thank you. I was struck by your elaboration of how influential the Belgium has had on this history of city ports across Arabia and Asia. I have a quick question on the modern transformation of old city state, old city ports to modern airports. Those lucrative trade along Belgium's lines are now considered illegal.
What is considered illegal? Sorry.
The trade. Okay, let's say it from the beginning. Those lucrative trade along Belgium's line are now considered illegal. As Belgians are no longer able to bring along commodities to supply their journey by international migration and visa regulations. What do you think about this? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know the extent to which things have become illegal, but I do know that people who travel in these ways, even by aircraft today, often make extra money by bringing things back and forth, basically doing arbitrage trade. So you see, for example, people who work on airlines as air stewards and air stewardesses, they may, for example, fly from Riyadh or Abu Dhabi to, let's say, Bangkok or Hong Kong, and there they will buy Gucci bags and things like that and sell them back home at not a bad profit. And I think pilgrims are constantly doing this. If you go to Jeddah and you look at the pilgrims, people are always buying, selling all kinds of things, and they bring them. So some classes of goods may be made illegal, but you have whole classes of goods which are not made illegal, such as mobile phones, Gucci bags, that sort of thing, even gold, jewels, high-value items. And so I think this continues, even though a small percentage of them may be made illegal, but I think it still continues to this day.
Okay, we have Miss Huda.
يا نعم. يا أهلا وسهلا. ممكن الميكروفون، ممكن تفتحي الميكروفون.
مرحبا دكتورة يانسينغ.
مرحبتين مرحبتين.
أنا الدكتورة هدى عبد الغفور أمين.
مرحبتين دكتورة هدى.
أهلا بك.
تشرفنا بحضوركم.
الله يحفظك. أنا سؤالي، هل تأثير طريق الحرير على المدن الجديدة ما زال مستمر أو والاقتصاد الجديد؟
أظن الطريق الحرير ما زال مستمر، وبالخصوص الناس الذين كانوا يمر بالطريق الحرير يمرون بالطريق الحرير الجديد، مثل الناس من جنوب شرق آسيا، مثل الناس من آسيا الوسطى. نعم، عندكم جالية من ناس من هذه المناطق موجودين، باكستان، وكمان مسلمين من الصين موجودين في جدة، في مكة. كانوا كطائف، كانوا كمطوفين، أو بعضهم كلاجئين من الانقلابات في بلادهم، مثل الصين، مثل الانقلاب الشيوعي. فهذا استوطنوا مكة، بعدين جدة، بعدين طائف، وأصبحوا مواطنين في السعودية، بس ما زال عندهم أصدقاء أقرباء في هذه البلدان. ومن حين إلى آخر أو في المستقبل، الآن وفي المستقبل، هم قاموا من جديد بالارتباطات جديدة عائلية وتجارية ما بين السعودية والصين الهند وأماكن أخرى. فهذه هؤلاء الناس ممكن نقول ممكن نفكر فيهم كسيكريت ويبن هو secret weapon للتنمية الاقتصادية والاجتماعية في المملكة.
شكرا لك.
عفوا دكتور هدى.
Thank you, Professor. I think we're about to wrap up, and if there is any more question, we can take it to wrap up this presentation.
Wonderful.
Okay. I should first thank the Saudi Social Science Society for hosting this event, and to thank Professor Eng Seng Ho for this insightful presentation. And we're really glad to have you with us this evening, and we wish that for more presentation in the future to be held in this very important topics. Thank you so much, and شكرا للجميع على الحضور.
شكرا جزيلا يا دكتور الغريبي ودكتور الدوسري. أنا سعيد جدا بهذه الجلسة الجميلة في هذه الليلة، وأنا أشكركم وأشكر كل الحاضرين بحضوركم، وأستمتع كثير بالجلسة وأستفيد كثير من الأسئلة والنقاش. وأنا أشعر أنه دوري الليلة في تقوية الارتباطات ما بين آسيا وشبه الجزيرة العربية، وأنا أقوم في هذه العمل وأستمر في هذا العمل، وأدعوكم في الاشتراك معي في تنمية وبنية وتقوية هذه الارتباطات القديمة، وإن شاء الله تكون واسعة وقوية في المستقبل. شكرا جزيلا، وأنا مستعد للتعاون معكم في هذا العمل المهم. شكرا.
شكرا لك دكتور.